yesterday for Easter. By the way, happy Easter, Stu.
Happy Easter, go ahead.
A day after Easter.
Yes. 364 days till the next one.
Thank you very much. Wow, how do you do that? Are you a mathematician?
No, that's right.
J.D. Vance was with the Pope on Easter, and then the Pope dies. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to leave it there. You draw your own conclusions, America. No, he had a good conversation apparently with the Pope, and the Pope died. He was very, very sick in the hospital. He had pneumonia. So we're back to the voting for a new Pope. Now, if I may, let me just tell you a story that I don't think most in the media even understand, and if they do, they certainly won't touch it. But I was there back in 2013, I think. Rob, what did we decide? It was 12 or 13, something like that. I was at the Vatican. I was supposed to meet with the Pope. I met instead with a bunch of the high advisor. It was Pope Benedict. Benedict wasn't just a conservative, although he was a staunch conservative. He was absolutely immovable. He was elected in 2005. He stood for everything the modern world wanted the church to abandon. He was moral. He had moral clarity. He was a traditionalist and a spiritual authority. And my first realization that Pope Francis was going to be none of these things is when the media was talking, they kept doing the white smoke and the black smoke, and they finally had, I don't remember what it is, the white or the black smoke, and it came out, and they knew they had a pope, and so they were waiting, and they were speculating. Everybody on CNN and ABC, they were all speculating. Who could it possibly be? And they started to speculate, and they would say, oh, it's probably this cardinal. Oh, he's a real hardliner. He's going to be really bad, blah, 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 blah. Then they finally came up to this pope. I don't remember what his real name is, but, they mentioned him, and they said, we don't know much about him. And within 10 minutes, everybody on every network started talking about how great he was going to be. He was practically Jesus. And then when he was named Francis, oh, see, he is Jesus. Or St. Francis, take your pick. And I remember looking at you, Stu, and saying, oh, boy, we're in trouble. They like him. This guy's going to be a nightmare. So you had Benedict, who would not compromise on life, no surrender on marriage, no applause for, the modern world, and the globalists hated him. The media called him rigid, progressive called him dangerous, and the machine went to work behind closed doors because that machine is in every government, and make no mistake, the Vatican is a government. Scandal after scandal, corruption, abuse, all real problems, yes, but they were used to discredit this pope and destabilize his papacy. And he refused to bend. And then suddenly in 2013, he resigns. Now, I remember when this happened, gang. Let's put this into what we now know, okay? We now know who replaced him. We now have seen the deep state in governments all across the world, okay? We have seen people being voted for, and the deep state didn't like them, and so they say, nope, not him. We've seen them throw people into jail. Okay. So by 2013, he resigns, and he's the first pope in 600 years to resign. And it's because he was too frail. He was too tired. Biden wasn't. But Benedict was. Okay. And yet he lived. For nearly 10 years he lived. He wrote, he was speaking, he was warning. He stayed in the Vatican, inside the walls. He stayed in the Vatican. He wore white. He signed his name, Pope Emeritus. That's not retirement. That's him not really resigning. That's resistance. That's what that was. And into that void came Pope Francis, okay? Immediately, everything about the church changed. There was global applause. Oh, my gosh. Climate change sermons. Remember those? They were great. Doctrinal ambiguity to the point where Catholics were like, wait a minute, what is he saying here? Suddenly, the church is less about salvation, more about sustainability and collective salvation, less moral compass, more moral relativism, and it seemed as though the fix was in. Now, even members of some press overseas were saying this was a coup. Apparently, Benedict left a box, it's called a white box, full of scandal files. And it was not a gift to Pope Francis. It was a warning. He knew, he saw it coming. So it wasn't a resignation. It was a removal from office, a soft coup by the progressive faction inside the church, who was eager to align Rome with Davos. And make no mistake, Davos was there. The UN was there. You know, all the global priorities of the UN and Davos were there that have nothing to do with God. But now the church was aligned with all of it. I remember going, as I said, we were supposed to meet with the Pope, and I went and I met with several cardinals, I think the good cardinals, and I saw stuff that I had never seen before. It was amazing. I saw the church as political and as spiritual at the same time. I'm a former Catholic, so I respect the Catholic Church. I also, I'm no dummy. It is a political organization. I think most churches can, go that direction, but especially one that's, 2,000 years old, 1,900 years old. I think it could probably go awry from time to time and go political, because that's what it was for a very long time. And I remember seeing the guy who I think was in charge. Is Jason out there? See if Jason can come in for a second. There was a guy that Jason was with me. Rob, can you open up one of those mics? Do you know? Jason, remember when we were at the Vatican? You were in the room. Remember that big map room? It was like we were in The Godfather.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember what that place was, but it was, like near the Vatican, right around the Vatican. And it was a place where they went and they held, dignitaries and held functions there. And it was amazing. It was like a 3-story room that we were in, and they were the biggest maps of the world I've ever seen. And all of it was incredible, and it had to be 400 years old. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's just steeped in, quite honestly, Dan Brown kind of.
Totally Dan Brown.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally that. And I had just gotten out of the archives the day before, and I don't even know how I got this invitation, but I was given an invitation, and even the guy who consulted the Pope for doctrinal issues, when we were, a quarter of the way into the archives, he was with me, and I asked him a question, and he said, "Don't ask me, ask him. I've never been allowed in here." And the next day, when we were getting a tour from the head of the Vatican Museum, he said, "You'll never guess where they were yesterday." And he said, they were in the Vatican archives. And she stopped. She was the head of the museum. She stopped, and she looked at me, and she was like, "Tell me about it. What was that like?" So, I don't know how we got in there, but we were asked to go in. So we're experiencing all of this stuff. And that night, we were with, I don't even remember who they were, but they were the most Christ-like, cardinals and preachers or whatever they were, that I had been with the whole time. They were so kind. You could just feel the goodness coming off of them. They were real servants of God. And we were all standing around talking, and you could tell everybody's guard in that group, everybody's guard was up. And all of a sudden, and I'm not kidding you, the room dropped 10 degrees. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be looking at the door way across this huge room. And here comes this guy. I don't know if he was a cardinal. Wasn't he in charge of all of the Pope's schedule or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So he was the main guy that, you had to get by if you were going to get to the Pope. And the room dropped. It became cold. And I said, "Holy cow, who is that guy?" And the whole the whole group of really nice guys turned around and looked at him, and one of them turned back and went, "Oh, you can feel that?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, just feel, no offense." I didn't know if they liked him or not. I said, "No offense, but he doesn't seem like a good guy." And he was way across the room. And they were like, "Oh, good sense on you." Oh, no, he's leading the opposition. So he's the guy, I think, that was helping thwart Benedict, and he was on in the inside. Okay, it's exactly the Trump story. Would you agree?
Yeah, it felt like it felt almost like a Game of Thrones within the Vatican, didn't it? That's like the best, and it was just the weirdest feeling.
Yeah, and it's exactly what we saw in 2016. I had never seen that before. But it's exactly what we saw in 2016. It's what we're now seeing in the EU, where the people with power are just taking people out. The pattern here is really familiar because we've seen it in Washington. We've seen it in Hollywood. We've seen it in the media. It's the replacement of the immovable with those who are more malleable. The strong replaced by the inclusive, the faithful with the fashionable. That's what happened. And this deep state doesn't just run in governments. It runs in everything. It runs in institutions. And when those institutions start to resist the world's direction, they're infiltrated, they're neutralized, and they're repurposed. And it is in everything. It happened at the Vatican. I saw it. And Pope Benedict was the warning shot that we all missed. He was the first Donald Trump, I believe. Now, what happens next? Are we going to get somebody, as the church is starting to grow again, the Catholic Church is starting to grow, and it's growing with Generation Z who are saying, we want our traditions back. We want marriage. We want truth. We want eternal truth as it's laid out in the Gospels of Jesus Christ. As it's growing, will the church grow in that direction? Or has Francis put such a cabal in there that you might get somebody who says that, but is it going to be, we just elected a new guy and he's doing exactly what the last guy did, just the way it happens in our government and every other government on earth? We'll see. It begins today. All right, more in just a second. First, let me tell you about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Israel is under attack still. Missile fire has resumed from terrorist groups dedicated to one thing, the complete destruction of Israel and the death of her people. And, people are cheering it on here in America. It is crazy what's happening. You put your kids to bed. You don't worry if you're going to have to grab them in the middle of the night because there's a missile flying. I mean, that doesn't... We would never put up with this. We would never put up with going to church and having to worry about somebody coming into our church and blowing our church up or shooting all of the members of the church. We wouldn't do it. It's real, it's right now, and it's happening in Israel. That's why the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is there. They are an organization that is on the ground every single day. They are providing the critical equipment that saves lives in times like this with bomb shelters and flak jackets and armored vehicles and armored ambulances and everything else. And every dollar you give goes directly toward protecting those who need it the most. Give a gift today and help protect the people of Israel. Go to supportifcj.org. That's supportifcj.org, or call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. 10 seconds, station ID. You're not going to hear that opinion anywhere, do you think, Stu?
An interesting, considering it happened very, very recently. It wasn't exactly the way I thought you were going to come out, but that's all right. It's an interesting start to the program, as usual.
I mean, I don't wish anybody any harm, obviously. And, he was the Pope. And I have respect for the Pope, but I have no respect for the policies that he held. Now, I'm not Catholic, so who am I to say? It's, I might as well be talking about women, as astronauts. I've never been to the moon, so what do I know? I'm not a Catholic, so I don't mean to impose but it is my viewpoint and what I witnessed there, and it's really fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Yesterday I posted on X something that was happening in where was that? In Ethiopia, and I saw this thing that happened on Easter Eve in Ethiopia, and there had to be 1 million people out in front of this giant cathedral, and they were all holding candles and singing, and it was amazing what's going on in Africa and all over the world. People are waking up again, and it will be interesting to see what happens, and who is selected by those in charge. And we've seen it before where I think there were like 2 popes. Wasn't there 2 different popes that died right before, in between Pope John Paul II? Because there was Pope John Paul I, and he lived for like 10 days. And I think there was another one that died right before that. They went through this, and it was kind of like God was like, no, not him. And then, okay, John Paul. So we'll see.
Did you just swipe right on a pope? Is that what you were doing?
I did.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, I mean, as God. I think God was like, swipe right. No.
You're right. Yeah, people are fascinated by this whole thing too, right? There was they had the movie that just came out, right? That was one of the best picture nominations.
Yeah.
People are again. I didn't see it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. As you are, I'm not Catholic. I'm not all that involved in the process, other than just kind of watch from afar. But it's
pretty amazing.
The wide range between Benedict and Francis is a really interesting thing that the Catholic Church is going to make a big decision on here real soon. And that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the future of the church, but it's so influential, in our politics and globally. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting next few weeks.
Will the church turn back around, back towards tradition and truth and the Bible, or is it going to keep going World Economic Forum?
Beck. NMLS 182334. NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 starts at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 800-906-2440 for details about credit costs and terms.
You know that feeling when you clean out a closet that's been sitting there and you've been wanting to do it. Maybe it's your garage. And when you finish, the air feels cleaner. You didn't realize how much that clutter was affecting you until it was all gone. Now imagine feeling that way about your financing. All the debt that you've been carrying around on your shoulders, the car loans, the credit cards, the personal loans, the random subscriptions. What if you get rid of all of that? Had a team, your team, who sat down with you and said, okay, here's the better way to do all of this. That's what American Financing does. American Financing is a family-owned mortgage company that specializes in helping get your financial house in order without pressure and without any gimmicks. Their mission is to help you save money, real money, to free up your life. You just need the right plan, the right people in your corner. And I think it's American Financing, AmericanFinancing.org. The consultation is free. The impact on your life is massive. Call American Financing at 800-906-2440, 800-906-2440, AmericanFinancing.net.
Head over to blazetv.com/Glenn. Subscribe, get $30 off. blazetv.com/Glenn.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. We're glad you're here. I want to take on something else that, I don't know, maybe I should just keep my big fat mouth shut. But because I think this one's going to piss off everybody, but it's the truth. There was a story in the New York Times, the podcaster asking you to side with history's villains. It was in the New York Times. Let me read some of it. Darryl Cooper is no scholar, but legions of fans, many on the right, can't seem to resist what he presents as hidden truths. All of a sudden, everyone was coming for Darryl Cooper. There were the newspaper columnists, the historians, the Jewish groups. Repugnant, says the chairman of Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Museum, in a statement. Even the Biden White House released a statement calling him a Holocaust denier who spreads Nazi propaganda. So it was, for a time, for Mr. Cooper, one of the most popular podcasters in the country, to do what he does best, hit record. In a special episode of his history program, Martyr Made, Mr. Cooper addressed the controversy which had exploded out of September 2nd appearance on the Tucker Carlson Show, the podcast started by the former Fox News host. At first, Mr. Cooper, a gifted historic storyteller, but not a trained historian, defended the claims he had made on Mr. Carlson's show. One that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of the war, ridiculous, not by implication, Adolf Hitler. Two, that millions had died in Nazi-controlled Eastern Europe because Nazis had not adequately planned to feed them. Okay, not true. He then said, the story goes on to say, then kind of retracted some of that stuff. This emotional ventriloquism is part of Mr. Cooper's approach and appeal. On TikTok, a fan praised him as one of the best historians of our time because he tries to go out of his way to understand the perspective of everyone involved in a situation. These critics have probably helped make Mr. Cooper bigger than ever. He has been the most subscribed to history newsletter on Substack, one spot ahead of the eminent economic historian Adam Tooze's in the wake of the Rogan interview Martyr Made, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they go on and on and on to talk about how this just can't stand. I mean, there's got to be some sort of filter. And, Joe Rogan just can't have on whoever he wants to have on. That's the problem. Is it, New York Times? Is that the problem? It's really interesting. Now, let me just look and let me just look in the past here and see if we've had this exact same problem with anybody else. Because the person that came to mind was not Darryl Cooper, but Nikole Hannah-Jones. Because I think those two are the same coin. And the coin's counterfeit, but just opposite sides of the same coin. The Martyr Made podcast spins a tale of grievance and distrust, and it's wrapped enough in enough fact to keep it plausible. But there are some facts in there. Okay. Jones, she did the 1619 project. She did the same thing in reverse, except I think she's actually worse. I mean, because I think she made up almost everything in that. She recasts American history as racist from the very inception of the country. Neither one of them is telling the whole truth. Neither one of them. Neither one wants to, I think. They're both in the business of narrative and not history. So am I. But I try to be fair. The real problem is not these two. Honestly, it's the New York Times. Because in their Sunday Styles write-up on Cooper, the Times poses as a concerned observer, wary of growing influence among the disaffected right. Why are we disaffected? Why is the right disaffected? We're disaffected because you have tried to take our country from us, everything that we believe, our history, our values, our traditions, and you've tried to denigrate them and destroy them every step of the way. And you've done it with one lie right after another. Okay? Why are they framing him not with facts, but with suspicion? Not because he's dishonest or not dishonest, but because he's popular. They clutch their pearls because he has an audience, and only the New York Times can have that audience. But where was that concern when they gave an audience to Nikole Hannah-Jones and gave her a Pulitzer for a project now so discredited by the very historians that are now talking about Cooper? Where was the caution when they declared that 1619, not 1776, was the true founding of the nation? They didn't question her authority. They didn't say, well, she's not a historian. They printed it. In fact, they taught it and endorsed it. They platformed it in schools. That's different than anything that Joe Rogan is doing. They platformed it in schools. So let's be clear, okay? I think both Cooper and Jones are wrong. They may have points worth considering, but I think that they get it fundamentally wrong in a few places. They are looking at facts to sell the story and not necessarily reveal the truth. Now, maybe I'm being too cynical, but that's the way I see it. And I'm not condemning either one. I'm condemning all of those on the left or the right that are now doing the same thing that the New York Times did with Cooper, but didn't do with Nikole Jones. Only one of those two was lauded by the New York Times as legitimate and a necessary corrective, even though it was all a lie, made up. So that's what, when I'm reading that op-ed in the New York Times, I can't take the hypocritical nature of it. Blood shoots out of my eyes. Because that's what the New York Times is actually saying. Don't you little people understand? We must decide what stories are acceptable. Not you, not somebody like Joe Rogan. We will decide which distortions are virtuous and which ones are dangerous. Not you. We get to choose the false prophets that get a column, which ones are called conspiracy theorists. We at the New York Times, we in the media. And that is the problem. This isn't about the authors. Okay, First Amendment gives them a right to say whatever they want. You may not like it. If you don't like it, stop listening. Well, but other people might listen. Yeah, well, other people might listen. Then maybe we should pay more attention to our education in our schools. Maybe we should pay more attention so we don't become somebody that is a dummy themselves and are... Because this is the problem. We don't have a press that exposes lies anymore. We have a press that curates the lies. I really think this is why I started collecting. We have now the third largest collection of founding documents in the American Journey experience, along with David Barton's Wall Builders. It's only behind the National Archives and the Library of Congress. Most people don't know it because... we don't talk about it yet. Beginning in 26, we're going to be making a big deal out of it. We also have the largest collection of Pilgrim-era artifacts and documents in the world. The largest. So I can tell you what happened in Jamestown in 1619. I can tell you this. The ship that Nikole Jones talks about, there were no slaves on that ship. How do I know? We have the manifest. No slaves. That seems problematic, doesn't it? And the Mayflower did not launch a system of slavery. In fact, they fought against it. This is so crazy. What the Pilgrims did against slavery was remarkable. Remarkable. When a slave ship accidentally came into their port, slavery was against the law. They called it man stealing. It was against the law. And as soon as that slave came into port, you could smell a slave ship. They knew exactly what it was. And they marched up and they arrested the captain of the ship. They put him in irons and put him in jail. And then these people who were already paying 50% of everything they made, these poor people, 50% of everything they made to a king that they despised, but they paid it because they wanted just to stay alive. They took up a collection from each other, not outside, from each other. Got a new captain, refueled, restocked the ship, and sent those people, those slaves, back to Africa so they could be freed. That's who our Pilgrims were. Don't believe me? You don't have to take my word for it. We have the evidence. Please. The longest running treaty with Native Americans happened with our Pilgrims. And you know who broke it? Not the white man. It was the Native Americans. And you know why? Because after years and years of the Pilgrims and the Native Americans getting along, Christianity was starting to seep into their culture, and they needed to go to war with a tribe. And the war, that the way they used to fight it, the Native Americans, it was okay to enslave your enemy. In fact, you needed to. You could torture them after you won just to make a point. And then you could enslave anybody you wanted. And Christianity said, no, you can't do either one of those things. And so the Native Americans that were part of this tribe that were friends and under this treaty with the Pilgrims, they started telling their chief, we can't do these things. And the chief got so pissed because he's like, we're fighting a war and we're fighting it the way we've always fought it, that they broke the treaty. Did you know that? No, we were just horrible. We stole the land. Did America live up to its ideals? No. Has anybody ever? Have you? Has the Pope? Has anybody really lived up to their ideals all the time? No. But you have ideals, and that's what matters. By the way, on the other side, I also happen to own a few original Nazi documents from the actual perpetrators. I've got documents from the engineer that actually calculated how much Zyklon B it would take to murder a room full of Jews. Okay? It wasn't because they didn't they didn't have enough food. This was calculated. I have the final prescription signed by Dr. Mengele for 1,000 liters of luminol for the so-called Children's Hospital. That's how the Reich was killing the undesirables in the Children's Hospital. They didn't do it in a frenzy. It wasn't in a riot. It wasn't out of desperation. It was silence in lab coats with bureaucrats and experts signing off, and the press, like the New York Times, refusing to say a word about it. The scariest people are not the ones in the streets. They weren't. They were the ones with titles, with offices, with press credentials. They were the ones with the doctorates. They were the people who decided what could be published, who could be punished, what could be known, what could be said. And that's the danger that we're staring down right now. Not from fringe theorists on a podcast, not even from overzealous academics with a Pulitzer, but from the institutions that bless one distortion and condemn the other. Not based on truth, but based on usefulness. Is it useful to our side? I just want you to know, this is my stance on this, and make this very, very clear. The First Amendment does not exist to protect comfortable speech. It doesn't exist to protect Cooper as opposed to Jones. It exists to protect both of them. It protects uncomfortable points of view, things you do not like to hear, and disagreement. It protects people who are absolutely wrong and even those who are lying. It protects the process so you can figure it out. There is no licensed priesthood in our country, that are the priesthood of truth tellers. No official ministry of facts. That's where countries go wrong. The Times should be exposing both sides of these stories, just like I'm doing. The distortions of the right and the left. But instead, they become exactly what they've warned us about. A newspaper that prints dogma and not dialogue. And the real problem here? No, the real solution here is you. Jefferson warned that a man who reads nothing but newspapers... a man who reads nothing is better informed than a man who only reads the newspaper. Okay? I would say the newspaper is today's social media. Man who reads nothing is more well-educated than a man who just only reads social media. But today we might say, better to be ignorant than confidently misled by trusted media. They see themselves not as a watchdog, but as a shepherd, and we are the sheep. So I'm not defending either one. I'm defending the idea that we, the people, not the institutions, not the elites, not the New York Times, not Joe Rogan, you decide what's true. And that takes work and it takes curiosity. Maybe the other guy's wrong. I don't know. Maybe I don't have the whole story either. I don't know. Look it up. Because the minute you let somebody else decide what you're allowed to hear, you have already surrendered your freedom to think. All right, Z-Factor, intentionally or not, you've been robbing yourself a little bit lately, a little bit here, a little bit there. There have been those late nights and the early mornings. How many times you found yourself saying, I'll catch up on sleep on the weekend, but you never do. You can't catch up on sleep. You can't. Somewhere along the way, you've started to forget that rest and what it feels like. Rest is so important. Real rest, not just collapsing on the couch, not waking up more tired than when you actually went to bed. I mean, that sinking in bone deep peaceful sleep that actually restores you. That's what Z-Factor is for. And it's not a drug. It's a nighttime formula with naturally occurring compounds that support your body's own natural sleep cycle. So you don't wake up in a fog. You wake up actually awake, clear, and refreshed, ready to face the day. First-time Z-Factor buyers will enjoy 46% savings. It's really, really good, and it works with your body. It's not a drug. It's all natural. $19.95, 30-day supply. Let your own body, just help boost your own body's ability to get you to sleep better. ReliefFactor.com. Call 800-4RELIEF. 800, the number 4-RELIEF.
They want you silent, obedient, and blind. Well, shoot, here we are with open eyes and a bit of rebellious nature. Hold the line, my friends. Glenn Beck will be back in a minute.
You don't have to be falling apart to know that something's off. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe it's stress that creeps in and won't let go. Maybe it's just that your body feels tense, overworked, like it's carrying more than it should. That's where CB Distillery comes in. They make high-quality, third-party tested CBD products designed to help you feel more balanced naturally. No gimmicks, just a daily tool for calming your nervous system, supporting better rest, and giving your body a chance to breathe again. Wouldn't it be nice to have fewer racing thoughts at night, maybe a little less tension in your shoulders, and a sense that your body isn't constantly stuck in overdrive? CB Distillery offers oils and gummies and sleep formulas and even topical relief, all made with clean ingredients and none of the mystery that you find in gas station brands or no-name bottles. It's kind of an interesting approach, something maybe a little bit different than you've tried before. They're one of the most trusted names in the industry. They're used by over 2 million people because they focus on results, transparency, and simplicity. So if you're tired of feeling just off all the time and you're looking for something that helps you reset without kind of sedating you, try CB Distillery, because sometimes peace of mind is as simple as just giving your body what it's been asking for. CBDistillery.com, CBDistillery.com. Use the code VIP right now. You can get a discount on your order. It's CBDistillery.com. The code is VIP. Check it out now, CBDistillery.com.
I have a few things to say about what's happening with the return of the illegals. This is an outrage. We have got to stop. This was actually a point of view on MSNBC. One, that this is exactly what Hitler did. Surprise, surprise. And next, this is just Donald Trump lulling African Americans to sleep. You're next. He's going to deport you. Oh my God. Are we really this stupid that we're just going to allow this? And why the concentration on this? We'll talk about it next.
Is Glenn Beck.